You think the fact that there are, 4,000, 5,000 Batei Chabad around the world, and millions and millions and millions of Jews who are touched by it, happens to be Lubavitch. Why? Because there's some great organization in the world of Lubavitch, some master plan, marketing plan that succeeded. No. There probably are better marketers out there than us, and more organized people than us. It's this nekuda that Rebbe was mechanech us. And we have to realize it, the yoker of that. And that is why Lubavitch today, not Lubavitch, it's the Rebbe. That is why we are who we are. And the others are still scratching their heads and wondering, how did they do it?
If you've been enjoying this podcast, please like and subscribe so that others can enjoy it as well. In addition, if you've benefited in any way from Among Chassidim podcast and would like to give something back, you can do so today at derher.org/donate. I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Derher, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. This episode is dedicated to the Nishmas Harav Sadia ben Rav Mordechai Olav Shalom Dahan and the Refuah Shlema for Chana Bas Nechamed Dina by Shaul and Shendi Dahan. Good afternoon, Rabbi Landa. How are you doing?
Baruch Hashem.
Okay, thank you for being here. You don't live here, so thank you for making the trip. And welcome to Among Chassidim.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And there are other things over here that attract me as well. But this alone is worth a trip.
Okay, very good. And so there's a few things that I want to discuss with you that I know about, but I always find it interesting to discuss the things that I don't know about. So I've done this before when I talk to others. Sometimes if we do a little bit chronological type of thing, that might be a good way to start. So in your case, I don't know your background, where your parents came from, where you grew up. I actually don't know. So if I don't know, that's I'll be more interested to know.
Okay, I'll share that. I actually grew up in Borough Park. My father is a Talmud in the yeshiva in Shanghai. He joined the yeshiva at the outbreak of the war. It's a whole long story that is not for now.
So he wasn't in
Otvotsk.
Mm-hmm.
From Otvotsk, he went to Vilna. And he had this attraction to Chassidus. That's what it was. He came from a Galician Chassidish mishpacha.
I'm not following. He was not in Otvotsk?
He wasn't in Otvotsk,
okay.
Correct. He joined the yeshiva in Vilna. He had this attraction. It's a whole long story that he was very drawn to Chassidus, and particularly to Chassidus Chabad. He came from Galician Chassidim. Sadiger, his father was a Sadiger Chassid. But he was drawn to Chabad. And in Vilna, he was Meifetz Chassidus. At the beginning of the war, all of the yeshivas went to Vilna. So in one city, you had all of the Litvische, there's a few Chassidish yeshivas. Most of the yeshivas then were Litvische, some Musadiki yeshivas. He was actually in the Pinsky yeshiva. And he thirsted for Chassidus. And he also organized, if you can find it in Toldos Chabad, Poland, Little, Latvia, he started what the Friedrich Rebbe gave a name, Igu Talmidei HaYeshivas Megazah Chassidim. In all these yeshivas, there were Litvish yeshivas, but there were a lot of Chassidish Shebachim who ended up over there for all kinds of reasons, if they wanted a yeshiva. And the Chassidish Anhoga and everything else went, because that wasn't the Avira over there. And this bothered him very, very much. And he organized in all of these yeshivas that those who are Megeza HaChasidim should get together and they should learn Chasidus, whatever. It was a whole, it was a whole operation that he kind of, and at the end of that process, they were not very happy. The yeshiva, he was in Pinsk, and they were not very happy.
What type of yeshiva is that?
Navardik. Mm-hmm. And they weren't happy that was going on, coming out of their yeshiva, and he was unhappy with what was, that it didn't allow for learning of Chassidus and Anhoga al Pidarkei Chassidus. So he asked the Rebbe about becoming a Talmud in the yeshiva.
The Rebbe?
The Frierdiker Rebbe. Also the Frierdiker Rebbe. You're talking about Tafshin.
Mm-hmm.
And
what do you mean he asked the Frierdiker Rebbe?
He asked the Frierdiker Rebbe. He wrote.
Where was the Frierdiker Rebbe?
We have the letter that the Rebbe writes to him.
He was in America.
The Rebbe just arrived in America at that time. Yeah. And he said, and the Rebbe writes to him that I don't remember it. Eisenwendig, we treasure that letter because that's when he became a ganzer chassid, and the rest is history. We even have the mashpi in the yeshiva in Vilnius, Rabbi Shua Isaac Baruch. We have a letter from him writing to the Rebbe, but the Frierdiker Rebbe told him that tzorach lahodos lahalal Hashem asher heir with an aleph heir as binosoi veheir as levavi, and arouse his heart because of kazeh, this shukah that he has to learn Chassidus, and he should be mamala that shukah in yeshivas Torah Chetmim. Yeah. And that became his key. So he became that's my father.
Did he see the Frierdiker Rebbe in Poland?
In America. So they came.
He never saw the Frierdiker Rebbe before.
Never saw the Frierdiker Rebbe before.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, never saw the Frierdiker Rebbe before. But a lot of letters. So he asked, and the Rebbe answered. And after the war, Tafshin Vav, they arrived over here. They Talmidim from Shanghai, and my Zaydim B'tzad Ha'im was in America during the war. Gewinn an Ungarische Chassid, Streimel and Weiße Socken, everything. He lived in Williamsburg, but this is before that whole Olam came out. So he was here during the war. Most of his family was wiped out in the Holocaust. My mother and a sister and a brother survived. They were in Auschwitz and they were in Bergen-Belsen, nothing but gelitten. And after the war, you have to rebuild. He wanted. This was new to him. This whole Indian of Lubavitch Chassidim. This wasn't known. It was a brand of Chassidus that wasn't kind of familiar to him. Right. But he wanted an Edom with Borden Payas. That's what he wanted. And so that's what happened. If you want to hear, he lived on Wilson Street. I was in that house in Williamsburg. So my mother, when she arrived, she's looking out the window on Wilson Street. And how far is that from 770? Not very far. So there are a group of Bacharim, Lubavitcher Bacharim, who walk past the street. So what do they wear? Had beards, Steitzach, and a gray hat with short, jackets or whatever. The way they looked back then. She calls her. She used to tell us that she calls her father, Tate, wer seine das dem Shigoyim? She never saw somebody like that. And eventually they met and got married, and Baruch Hashem, and here we are.
Because they
look funny. She never saw such a mahalach of Chassidim that wear these funny American clothes. So he explained to them, so Gross Tzaddik, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zahila Kiyid, and whatever it is, and these are his Talmidim. So that's that story.
So in America, your father learned to take in 770?
In Bedford, first in Bedford in 770, yeah.
Your father?
Yeah, until they got married. Elter Bacher, they were all Elter Bacher. They were probably, I'm guessing 27, 28 by the time they arrived here. Some were a little bit older, some were a little bit younger. The Frierdiker Rebbe my father would tell you, he took an interest in each one of them. They were all Yisomim, and he cared for them in a very personal way and took an interest in their shluchim and so forth, and that's the beginning of that. Interesting. Sorry, here's a shliach of the Rebbe, and my father was a ganzer chassid from head to toe. that the Masada Kedushin at that wedding of my parents was the Satmarov.
It's had the
Yeah,
it's had
because
your mother.
my father didn't make the chasna. My Zayda did. He was the one who made the chasna, so I guess he was in charge of that. And so we have a picture. There's a picture that became world famous because he's sitting over there. You can see Rabbi Mentler. There was the Eilim sitting around by the Kabbalah Sponim, where you see him sitting at the head. We're familiar with them.
Interesting. So how did your parents end up in Borough Park?
The Rebbe gave them. So my father was a Malamed in the yeshiva in Borough Park. And the Rebbe said to live near the work.
Which yeshiva was that?
Be'er Shmuel.
You went to Cheder there?
As a kid, yeah. When we sat shiva, my father gekommen Talmidim from Be'er Shmuel who remembered him from who knows how long ago.
So how long were you learning there?
I left Be'er Shmuel, I think, 5th grade. And I was the youngest of the boys. So, and then I went to Bedford from 5th grade and on. And that's it. So I went through the whole system.
So you were in Bedford through high school?
The fire and the end of Bedford.
I don't know what you're talking about. The fire?
There was a fire in Bedford, indeed, a big
That's
fire
why-
in the middle of learning.
That's why it
That was
closed?
the end of Bedford, yeah. But the new building on Ocean Park was being built already.
I thought it was because of there was too many rats someone told me there's too many rats in the building.
That too. I'm sure. that too. I remember that fire very distinctly. The whole 4th floor, it was in flames. You're not talking about a small fire. It was a big fire, and it was the middle of learning. It was in the afternoon one day. And for a number of weeks, maybe even a couple of months or so, we learned in different places in Crown Heights and some shuls and whatever. And then for the next month, the Ocean Parkway was already finished.
So you were in Ocean Parkway?
I was in Ocean Parkway, yeah. Besmedrish. No, 3rd year, Mesifta. I had Rabbi Ushbal, I had Rabbi Buket, I had Rabbi Shrei, 3rd year, Mesifta. Yeah, over there. And then from there, you went to Newark. But then Newark ended, and Morristown began.
So you remember
I
you were at the tail end of all the meisters?
Yeah, well, I was not there the 1st year of Morristown. I was there the 2nd and 3rd year of Morristown, yeah.
When Newark and Morristown were happening
No,
simultaneously?
they weren't together. No, Newark ended, and there was the class above us was the first one to initiate Morristown.
Oh, so you never went to
I was never in
Newark.
No.
And
then after Morristown 2 years, so the Rebbe then sent a shlichus to several yeshivas, to France, 10 Bochum, 10 to France.
what years are you talking about? I'm
Ooh.
missing this part.
I'm guessing that was Lamed Daled or Lamed Hey, that the Rebbe sent 3 kvutzes of Shluchim to Montreal, one to Montreal, one kvutze to Montreal, one kvutze to Kvachabad, one to Teres Emes in Yerushalayim, where I ended up, and one to Brenois.
Lamed and Hey.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was. Could be Lamed Hey, Lamed Vav, possibly.
So you went to Teres Emes.
I was in Teres Emes, yeah. And that was an experience in itself.
So before Teres Emes, you were a bacher. You went to, first of all, when you were a kid, you went to Yechidus?
My first yechidus that I remember that I had, was my bar mitzvah. I went with my parents. Yeah. And then those years we were zeicher that every Yom HaLedus you were able to go in after that. So last time I counted, it's a real dover shebemidyon yechidus. It was seven yechidus that I had. Yeah. Zeicher to have. The last one was as Chos and Kala.
So the Rebbe stopped the Yechidus, I think, in Lamed Hey, for the Yom HaLedus.
I'll trust your memory on that.
I happened to just learn the Sicha,
Yeah.
Lamed Hey, where the Rebbe announces that there will no longer be Yechidus for Yom HaLedus.
There were a couple of kufas of kind of dialing down. It wasn't in one fell swoop. It started off, I remember that you need to have a settle from the Anhola, Bashmiras Storim and so forth, which, yeah, I don't remember anyone who wasn't able to get it. Maybe my circle of friends were all the good kids, but that was one dialing down. And then was when it ended. And it was, listen, it changed. It changed. That's what needed to be done. So that's what happened. Even the Yechidus and Verchasen has changed.
I think the Rebbe said that the thought was, I'm like paraphrasing, the thought was that it's going to be a big te'elis, the Yechidus, but not necessarily was it.
In the Sichi,
I'm pretty sure that's what the Rebbe says, yeah. I guess we didn't do what we were supposed to. What is there anything from your Yechidus and when you're a Bacher that's noteworthy?
A couple of things, not Yechidus. I'll share a few things that I think are noteworthy and also applicable, useful. That's,
whatever you don't want to share is more interesting.
Or what I do want to share is not interesting. That's what you say.
No, I said more.
All right, more interesting. Okay, go ahead. I don't have anything,
So you go ahead. No, what is?
No, I was going to share a little bit in terms of the shlichus and lead into this.
Okay, I'm just trying to go in the order.
You want to go in the state
till we get to the shlichus.
So after the chasana, I went to Kollel, and
1 second. When you were a bacher,
you're not ready to jump over that.
Yeah, I have to. My brain
you want to
has
take a local.
Yeah, when you were a bacher, and when you're learning in Bedford and Dean, and then in Newark, and then in Morristown. You were by the Rebbe's Fabrengen, like all the Shabbosim?
Whenever there was a Fabrengen, I don't think it ever happened that we were there and there was a Fabrengen. I don't remember that. But the Klal Gadol was that whenever there was a Shabbos, you didn't know. Later on it became that it was a Davarogel Shabbos Fabrengens. But it used to be Shabbos Mevorchim and some other time, whenever there was, when the Rebbe saw fit to make a Fabrengen. And you didn't always know. Sometimes you found out after Shachris, after Musaf.
On Shabbos.
He was giving a clap or whatever it is, and he was announcing Mincha. So if the Rebbe waited for Mincha, that meant that there wasn't a Fabrengen. If the Rebbe went out before Mincha was announced, that means the Mincha will be after, That was the signal, whether there was. So sometimes you only heard about it on Shabbos. But I don't remember in the 2 years that I was in Morristown, if it happened, that happened extremely rarely. That we were there,
right? Because
there was anticipation that there won't be a Fabrengen. And I have to tell you that those Shabbosim that we were there on a Shabbos, it was a bazunder geschmack in Yeshiva on Shabbos. A bazunder geschmack. Chassidus before Kabbalah Shabbos, Shabbos in the morning. A little bit of an opportunity of arichas and davening, whatever. But those were very special times, really, actually. But if the Rebbe Fabrengen, we wanted to be there.
When you were in Bedford, you also were by the Fabrengens and Shabbos, or you were home?
In Bedford, so how old was I? Wait a minute. So in Bedford, if there was a Fabrengen, I would walk. I didn't have where to stay. There was no dorm. I was home. I walked the Mahalach from Borough Park to Crown Heights.
By yourself?
Yeah. I walked. I can't even tell you how many dozens of times. Probably maybe a couple of hundred times. We did that. That was the usual thing. In order for me to arrive on time, I used to chap up a Saminyan in Borough Park somewhere that davened early, and I went. They finished, and I went, and I came there. I remember once arriving, come to 770 after the door. It's a long walk. It was from where I lived in Borough Park. It was an hour and a half, And Rabbi Yisrael sees me coming in. There was no Verbrengen. So still, some 70s quiet. I come from Borough Park. Oh, sagt das ist Haschar Haliche. He tells me, Heilig Weine Häuser. Right. That was it.
Okay. And then you were sent on shlichus from Morristown to Teres Emes.
Finished Morristown. We were going to go into Chayva V'Torah, what was then called Chayva V'Torah. We actually started, because the shlichus in Teres Emes started after Tishrei. So we were sitting in Chayva V'Torah, as Rabbi Mentlik is called the Chayva V'Torah Shul. So we learned over the Chayva V'Torah and found a place where we can lay down and have a bed, and then there's a sichel was that sichel where the Rebbe spoke about Arzei Halvonen Asher Nota, that there has to be a netiyah memokim l'mokim, and was this whole of sending shluchim in these places, and that sichel I think was Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah, if I'm not mistaken.
So you didn't know?
Tishrei, we didn't know that this was going to happen. That wasn't to say there. And it was figured out who goes where. And after Yantiv.
But the Rebbe was sending shluchim to Teres Emes before.
No.
And not Tavshach Zayin, there was.
Oh, okay.
It happened.
That's long before me. You're talking about. I'm talking. What am I saying?
Lamed
Hey, Lamed Vav. No, that's a long time.
Saying it happened, but that wasn't the regular Seder.
Yeah. No. It was not the Seder for 20 years before us. No, something like that. Yeah. There were hookups then. So the Mesiras Nefesh of the locals, to hear a hookup, their Mesiras Nefesh was to get up at 2 a.m.
Right.
For us, that wasn't a Mesiras Nefesh. That wasn't even a thought. So those kinds of things, you know.
But they did it.
Some did, and some some didn't. Yeah.
So you were there for 2 years, then you came.
We were there for 2 years and came back, and we were in 770.
Until you got married.
In 770, yeah. So in 770, no, didn't go straight to 770. The first year we were in Ocean Park, the Shluchim in Ocean Park. Are you familiar with that? I don't know. So we were the elder Bacher in Ocean Park in Besmedish. That was also good year. We heard Shurim from Rabbi Yoel. Gekocht them. Very geschmack. And
So that was your. So that's when you interact with Rebbe, not in high school.
No, I had Rabbi Yoel in Ocean Park.
In Mesivta.
In Mesivta, yeah. Give Rabbi Yoel, they gave him for 15-year-old kids, you know. That was his job.
You didn't.
That was actually his job. His job was that he taught 15-year-old kids Odom Ki Yaakov and L'Kutei Torah, you know, those Maimorim L'Kutim. No, I also learned Derech Mesisecha. Both. 1 year was, it was 2 years. No, 2 years I had Rabbi Yoel, 15, 16, something like that, in the Best Medrash. When you were, Rabbi Ushbol had the first year of Best Medrash, Rabbi Bukad had the second year of Best Medrash, and those 2 years you had Rabbi Yoel. And there's no question about it, that he opened up, you know, Taki young, but I didn't quite grasp in Yonim. Not that older people do grasp in Yonim. You can be older than not grasp maybe his darf to sein, but that was wonderful. It was actually fantastic.
Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's not that when you're older you need a proper mashpia. When you're younger, it doesn't make a difference. Maybe fakert. When you're younger, you need Rebbe Yoel. I don't know. Maybe that.
But to be masber musokim, for the kids, this was a great thing. It wasn't. I'm not saying that you would think though that you know, for those who are shaykhs to understand more, you need someone who could be masber something more. Right. But then we had him a whole year. We were at that time probably 21, 22, I'm guessing, when we were in Ocean Parkway. 21 this time. A little bit more shaykhs. The thing is like this, you know, I ended up, our group ended up in Teres Emes for whatever the reasons were. Everybody had their own reasons. But there wasn't anyone over there in Kempster Chassidus, there wasn't anyone. So one of the differences between Yishalmi Chassidim, in terms of Avona V'Asoga, good verstehen something and Hasbara, that's for the most part. That wasn't their cup of tea. That wasn't their union. Our friends who went to Kfar Chabad, we were envious of them. How that ended up, I don't know.
Shlomo Chaim?
No, it was after Shlomo Chaim. Mendel was there.
Mendel.
Yeah. But they had mashpim over there, and they had shurim, Yizdavsazayin. We had in Nigla, we had Zelig Feldman. That was something extraordinary. Can't duplicate that either.
Right. Okay, and so you're back in Ocean Parkway, and then you went to 770.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where you learned Yeridea and Smicha and 770.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what year did you get married?
Lamed Zion. Summer of Lamed Zion.
And you were in Yechidus before the Chasana.
Yeah.
Then you went to Kail.
And then I went to Kail. Yeah.
For how long?
I was there for a year. Almost finished the year. Yeah.
So before we move on to the shlichus, what like you knew you wanted to be a shliach? Like how did this work?
Yeah, it became and Baruch Hashem, I'm very proud to say that all of our not all, but Rubam Kekulam, and that was a chiddush. I think that was the beginning where this became the norm. Nicht der Oisnam.
So that was the beginning of that.
I think so. I think that more or less that kufa, that vintage. It became, listen, for some people it's not shaykhus and whatever, the chas v'sholom not making it. I'm just saying, in terms of numbers, it became, I think, what year was the Ayin Aleph Mostis? So that was Lamed Beis. Lamed Beis. So that started, Ribui. But by the time my wife and I went out in Shlichus, the numbers had already gotten up. Not everybody was in America, but could be that was the Rebbe's kavanah with Ayin Aleph. I don't know what it was, but there were more mostes and there were more Shluchim, and those years. Listen, I was sitting, and I remember that vividly, and I can tell you who was sitting next to me. That first Kindes HaShluchim. There wasn't a mitzias of a Kindes. That's the year it was.
The American Kindes.
The American Kindes, yeah. It was only America and Canada, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then the Rebbe said, "Wenn wir doch bei die Polen machen eine Kindeselomi."
That was what he told. First international Kindes.
But I remember sitting upstairs, maybe 30 chevra. And most of them were the older group. Few of us were the youngsters. And we were, before there was a kinnis, we were starving for this. Because there's no facts. There's no communication. If you want to talk long distance, you have to pay 25 cents a minute. I mean, that too. I want you to know, phone calls were a shtikl panos. That's what it was. And just to be able to have and how much could you do by phone? You were really not independent. You were meant to be self-sufficient. A little isolation, Chassid is nicht elend, right? But you were meant to be self-sufficient. It's very, very hard. The stuff that we take for granted now. It's all kind of gewaldig, You have shiurim that are given to you. You have topics. You have ideas. You can share. We were starved before there ever was a kinnis shluchim. My chevra, when we heard that this was going on, the first kinnis shluchim, it was like an excitement. We sat in the front row, didn't want to miss a word.
So how did the shlichus come about?
the backstory, in terms of specifically of St. Louis, the backstory, I found out afterwards, there was a group of Balabatmas. You need to know this about St. Louis. St. Louis always was a Choshev Shtot.
The Frierdiker Rebbe went there.
Yeah, but there were other places also. There were 10 cities that the Frierdiker Rebbe went on. Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, I'm working on a book about that.
There's an article in this month's The Hair about the Frierdiker Rebbe's visit.
I saw, and some of the stuff that's in that is from my article that's published in Chabad.org.
Okay.
And
it's footnoted, obviously.
Without attribution.
Without?
I think so.
You have to make a correction.
That was written already 20 years ago.
Okay.
And from then I have a lot more material, Be'ez Hashem. But it's okay, that's good. So there was a good number of Yidden there, 60,000 Jews. Rav Roshi. It's an organized kehillah. There's a Vada year over here. That's the Vada year over here. I'm saying in St. Louis. It's a Vada year of organized shuls, and I'm talking about Orthodox shuls, versteht sich. That's, I think, 125 years old. So you're talking about a kehillah that was functioning. When we arrived, there were 6 or 7 Orthodox shuls. And they were mostly Anoshim Pshutim. Shem Shabbos, did what they were supposed to do, but they were mostly Talmidei Yeshiva. Very few, a small handful of people who went to Yeshiva, who went to Tervadah, some people went to Chaim Berlin. The parents wanted them to learn something. But those mamish yechidei skula, you probably count them on the fingers of your hands. And maybe have a couple of fingers to spare. So St. Louis was an Ir Ve'im B'Yisrael. I don't know some ideas. There was a letter that was written to the Rebbe, of which I have a copy. About 10 signatures. Asking the Rebbe to send a shliach.
So a city like that, isn't it strange that there wasn't a shliach till then?
There was no one who was called a shliach. There was some Chabadniks who lived.
But I'm saying, isn't
wonderful Chabadniks. So first of all, Rabbi Sholem Rifkin, who later on became the Rav Roshi, is Beryl Rifkin's son. He was in St. Louis as a bocher. I have the letter, the Frierdiker Rebbe. There's a shul in St. Louis called Nusach Hari.
So there was Lubavitch activity.
Yes. And one of the reasons I want to write this book is I want to document that. We're not visitors over here. Way back when there were Hasidim from Geza, what the Frierdiker Rebbe used to call. They knew that if they needed a Rav, the place to get a Rav is the Lubavitch Rebbe, and they wrote to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he sent him Rabbi Sholem Rifkin. He was a bocher then. I think he was 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little winding over here. I just saw this and I noticed this. I remember which Sefer HaMaimorim. It's in the back. Simchas Torah. Farbrengen Simchas Torah by the Frierdiker Rebbe. I think it's Tavshin Tes. Makes sense that it was Tavshin Tes. And everything is in Rosh Tevis, so you have to guess who it is. But Al Pi Pashtus, the guess is a correct one. Is Rabbi Rifkin Sr. went over to the Frierdiker Rebbe, apparently, in Simchas Torah. His son, Sholem, was already in St. Louis, far away, weit weg. He used to travel by train, maybe by bus, and he's maskir, his son, Sholem, to the Frierdiker Rebbe. It's a very interesting answer over there. And that's why it's printed with Rosh Tevis, but the Rebbe says, "Ich halte for a klugen." Frierdiker Rebbe says, I always held you for a klugen. You need to remind me about Sholem. That he's always in my machshava, all the time. And I think this, some of the stories that I can share with you about this, I think this is true of all Chassidim and b'miuchad all Shluchim. I think this is the Messias. That's when it was said, but the emes davon is true always.
You referenced the Hayom Yom that Chassidim zijn nicht elend.
Nicht elend, yeah.
Amos, the Ram.
Yeah. And many hundreds of shluchim can tell you stories that point in that direction. It's nicht allein.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we see it begoli, the care, poshet, the care and the concern. And sometimes we see it begoli, but it's always there.
It's always there.
So we talked about the Yechidus and we see it, we feel it as a minus. So it gefällt. But afterwards, we can say, the Rebbe always used to say, that it can't be Chson. Everything that happens has to be only the man used to geh versteh. Wir verstehen nicht das. Go ahead.
So the Balabatim wrote a letter to the Rebbe.
So they wrote a letter. And
what did it say? That they
we want to have the letters in English. We want to have the teachings of Chabad. We want to raise our children to have the benefit, something like that. And the people who signed it.
So it wasn't a shul.
It wasn't a shul. No. It was a white sheet of paper. I have it with all the signatures. I knew the people who signed it. I think every single one of them is Shavak Chaim L'chol Chai already. And I'm telling you, that's the backstory, which I didn't know b'shas ma'aseh because I didn't see this letter. Someone gave it to me. One of the signatories on the letter had a copy of it, so he gave it to me. And Rabbi Shalom Weinberg is Mamunah both on Kansas and Missouri. So I think the one who came knocking on my door was Rabbi Shalom Weinberg. That he was looking at. This was about after that period of time when this letter was sent.
Mm-hmm. So do you know the Rabbi Chavdek?
I imagine. I mean, maybe I was told. I don't remember. It's a long time ago. I don't remember. But that's pretty a good bet that was the story. That was the story. So he went looking and, of course, went and looked and took interest. And what do we know then? I'm kidding around, I'm traveling to St. Louis, I'm going to see for Roy, for shliach. Oh, spaceman.
You went?
Oh, spaceman. Yeah, we went. Nowadays, you scout out the place and you get all the stats and the average household income and so forth and so on, and what the taxes are, etc., etc. None of that existed. No one thought about that. We went very much between us. Very much between us.
So you wrote to the Rebbe about this option? Like, how did that work?
No, I only wrote about this. Only wrote about that. The Rebbe gives us Skomo Bracha. We arrived in St. Louis. I'll tell you something, little things over here and there.
Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Der Herr. We live in a chaotic world. A world where for us Chassidim, as a Seinu, Lei Ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidische Der Herr provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Der Herr books, Der Herr online content, and so much more. Men women and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular derher, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's bachrim in yeshivas receiving the derher, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying their hair club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Derher Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Derher is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Derher through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
We arrived in St. Louis. The first thing that we just gekommen Yutas Kislev. So I'm coming straight from Yeshiva, from Kol. Yutas Kislev is not going to go by without whatever. And in St. Louis, like I said, had an oilam of Anoshim Shutim, but people who, you can call them to Farbrengen, Yutas Kislev. Some of them were those Hasidim from Geza, So I made a shtickle of Farbrengen. And it's gegangen gut. It was in my house, in our house. We left after Tishrei, Yutas Kislev. 2 months later, whatever. It was what we would call now a small, Hemische Farbrengen. So next year we resolved that we're going to make a nice big Farbrengen. There's a shul, the same shul, this Nusach Hari shul. And
same shul as what?
What?
The one that...
Yeah, that's right. He wasn't the Rav over there anymore. He had left. He was over there for a number of years. So all kinds of interesting stories. The Rebbe predicted when he left. The Rebbe told him that he's going to come. He'll come back. What happened was that after Rav Eichenstein was nifter, we were in St. Louis already. Then Rav Eichenstein was the for many years the Rav Roshi. It's a unique position that St. Louis has. Rav Roshi, that was his title, and that's what he did. And he wasn't really a Rav of a specific shul. He was the Rav of the Vaad Ha'ir, which represented all the shuls and all of the moistus in town. So after he was nifter, Rabbi Sholem Rifkin had Hasidim of his who really enjoyed him when he was there, and he was shaykh. So a handful of people, and they happened to be in a position of leadership. Kanta B'Salan, and they went to some yeshivas. This one went to Tarvadas. This, like I said, Chaim Berlin, wherever they went, and they said, "We need a new Rav Roshi. It's going to be Rabbi Sholem Rifkin," and that's how he came to that. So I was a youngster. Without being Polish, people say, I was a youngster, I was new in town. This whole thing happened. I was 6 months in St. Louis, more or less, when Rav Eichenstein was nifter, and right away the conversation was, let's find a new Rav Roshi, and I wanted it should be at least someone who is a Chabadnik in Ganzen, a bissel asach, that has to be some. So, again, without mentioning, there was a Rav. It was a Rav, a Lubavitcher Rav, who was mesugel, I thought, for this. And I called him up, and I said, this is happening, they're looking. I think you should submit your candidacy. I didn't think of Rabbi Sholem Rifkin. I didn't have a kasher with him. I didn't think about it. I thought of this. No, I would have gone to as many as I can. Let them all submit their candidacy, as long as it's a Chassidish Rav. So that Rav wrote to the Rebbe. I guess he was interested in it. And he got an answer, as long as it doesn't hurt the candidacy of Rabbi Sholem Rifkin. So Hastis that's the way it was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
You're holding it to Kislev when you made a Fabring.
Oh, I made a big friend. Thank you very much. Yeah, you'll have to do this through our conversations. Remind me where I was up to.
Okay.
So we had, this is the lower level of the Nusach HaRishul. It was a Motzei Shabbos, Gemacht am Lav Malka. Yeah, it's a different, now from communities, large, it's grown, it's developed. It wasn't that way. 200 people showed up. We brought Rabbi Moshe Feller. He regaled, he told, he spoke, he had a meeting from the palm of his hand. It was a historic thing. So what I wanted to tell you is I sent invitations. I didn't make invitations for this. I went to a printer, and the printer types it. That's what you had to do then. And there's an invitation, and I had to have a description, explanation of what Yutas Kislev is. We sent it out. Stamps, whatever. We had a couple of hundred people who came. Sad. They had never seen something like this. And so we sent an invitation to the Rebbe with a return envelope, you know how it goes. I think it was with a return envelope, yeah. What came, and as far as I know, that wasn't a shliach. $36, that's what it was. It was $36 for a couple. Come. It was a 20 and a 10 and a 5 and a 1 cash. And it was Miyama Klein's handwriting. So that's what I have. Yeah. Was, you get something like that. There were a number of stories. Maybe we'll get to it.
Right when you come on shlichus.
Yeah, it's all at the beginning. Yeah.
So for you, the Rebbe is being part of your shlichus.
That too, I hope. Yeah. I'd like to think that those were moments that I was able to cause the Rebbe nachas ruach. And
what were other such moments?
That's what we're about. Right?
Yeah.
We think we're leaders and we have visions, garnished. That's the key. Yeah. I'll share with you this massive if we can get to talk about the Menorah.
We have time, don't worry.
So I'll tell you some stories over there also. Okay, so we'll get to it. No, you're taking the local.
What were other such instances that you saw the Rebbe's siachas to your shlichus?
A lot of it has to do with the Menorah. So, but if you can put it off for later, I'll share some of those things.
You can start. You can do the Menorah, and then
we
can always go back.
So
I think now we're no longer in chronological order.
It is pretty much chronological because the Menorah story happened very early on.
Oh yeah.
It was.
You went.
I wanted to do something.
You went on Lametes.
I went. No, by the time we landed, no. We arrived as Tishrei Mem Aleph.
Oh.
So that
you were in Kaila for a few years.
I believe that first Chanukah, such a good number long. My wife was teaching in Beis Rivka. They didn't want her to leave. So it took a little bit of time from the time that we got the answer from the Rebbe until actually going. It took some time. Not a lot of time. It took some time. So I wanted to do something about shtickle vision, If anybody today can understand this, you came to a town, 99% of the Jews in the town never heard the word Chabad. Was is das? Not was is das? What's that? You have to explain. So, there were some old timers who knew Chabad. Maybe some of the old timers in this Nusach HaRishul, they were there. That's what you're talking about. You had to literally explain. You met somebody, what are you here for? Rabbi Feller in one way or another, the questioner says, what are you doing over here? You have a school? You're teaching in the school? You have a shul? You didn't have either one of those things. So what are you doing? they couldn't grasp the concept of what we were doing. Anyway, so I wanted to make a shtickle impact in town, other than the few people that I was learning chassidus with or teaching. You didn't have prepared lessons either. You had to do it all. You know what was the one book that wasn't available in English about chassidus? Think Jewish, by Zalman Posner.
That was the book.
Yeah, that was the book.
So I'm just trying to understand. It was very clear that you're not there to make a shul.
It wasn't mufrach. No, it wasn't mufrach. But you're coming to a community that has established. You have to be very careful not to be seen as hurting anybody, because so there's even a nusach harishul. You know what I'm talking about? So, granted, they didn't do the work that we ended up doing and end up with 6 shluchim, Baruch Hashem, that we have today. Yeah, granted, that wasn't the case, but you can't do anything to hurt them. So we had to be very, very careful and go about it in a judicious way. There was a day school. There was a kosher day school, and shuls. Right. So anyway, I wanted to do something that's fachap in the community, and something up. So at that time there was the tumult. My friend Yisrael Brod had this thing. I think you wrote about it, Tinek. Last year you wrote about it.
No, it was
so those
quite
letters,
a few years ago.
those letters. How would we see those letters? I don't know. This time I heard about it somehow, and I asked them to mail the letters to me. I mean,
the letters to the Federation.
The Federation, yeah.
That Rebbe wrote.
I'm just saying, there wasn't even a place where you would automatically find this. You can't go to it wasn't a website. It wasn't. You have to understand how out of the loop everybody felt. Your mamish had to call somebody and hear about it. If you were zeicher, you called the right person, and he didn't have it, and how was he going to get it? How was he going to get it? There's no fax machine either. He has to mail it to you. I mean, just appreciate that.
So Yisrael Brod mailed you the
letters. I don't remember now, but yeah. So as I saw that this is the thing that the Rebbe wanted.
So you're saying even the fact to make a public menorah then wasn't like, okay, this is what you do. It was like an idea that they heard that a shliach did it.
There was, I know that Rabbi Shem Tov in Philadelphia had a small, and then there was, who was the fellow in San Francisco? Where?
Chaim Drizin.
Chaim Drizin, yeah. A big one. Maybe I saw pictures of it. So angefangen. Okay. I had a schlepper. Guy, whoever was coming, you're always, the first 10, 20 guys that you attract are always a little bit interesting when you're going shlichus. And I mentioned to him what I want to do. Oh, as he sits down and he designed them 15 feet, 2 halves, 4 branches. And the middle is, with the 2 of them are brought together, so you have a menorah. So it's 3 pieces of hakel. There's the brackets on the bottom to keep it standing upright, and 2 halves of the menorah, 4 and 4 attached in the middle, and 15 feet tall, a gemachter design. Now we found a fabricator, a metal fabricator. It was a yamid geld back then, probably which I didn't have. You're talking about a long time ago. $500 he wanted, Seigelchter. So there was a metal fabricator. Okay, so then where do I put it? So I'm driving around. There's a government center, Clayton. Clayton is St. Louis City. It's the city of St. Louis, where everybody lives. Is in St. Louis County, and the county has a county executive. He's like the mayor of the county. Same thing as a mayor. And the government office building, they had a big, nice plaza, and I had a younger man over there, a Yid, from a Yid, who was dreht in politics, and he knew the county executive. I gave him this idea. All of this was whatever. It was news to him. He never, okay, next idea. Let's do something for the Jewish community that time of year. That's basically what it was. It seemed that he didn't think it was a problem legally or anything. He didn't have any problem. The county executive, okay, sure, mask it. And what happened was, I come there, delivery, we're bringing it the morning of. The 3 pieces of the menorah are there.
It was an event, or just you wanted to?
We were going to make an event, yeah. But that was the plan. And come there, the first thing was we're putting it up. It was a few days before Hanukkah. The first things we're putting it up. We had the Hazefel Seichel I had, that I knew that there was an issue over here, that the Jewish community here and there, they have their shtick separation, church, state, and whatever it is, that they think this is bothering them. So much Seichel I had, something? I'm not going to make a big tumult beforehand. Let's get it up. We'll get it up. It'll come. It'll already be Lacha Maisa. It's up already. So you're in a different position. I didn't imagine how it would break out. It was a terrible thing.
You knew that people locally had an issue? You knew that Bechal people had an issue?
No, I didn't know locally. Right. I didn't talk to anybody about it. Mm-hmm. But I was better keep it quiet until we get it up. The Eibishter to give them the Seichel, which saved the day, actually. I come there. It's delivered. No one in the community knows about it. But the county executive's office sent down a guy saying, "Oh, stop, you can't put it up." I was year number 1, in contrast to year number 2, when all, broke loose. But year number 1. Year number 1, the county executive sent somebody down. We have to have the counselor's office, the legal lawyer of the county, needs to take a look at this, whether this is okay. And then there was no rulings from the Supreme Court. Eventually, there was a ruling in Pittsburgh. And a few other things, whatever. All of that, they tied that this is unconstitutional. They always tied that. I'm not bechuv to listen to their understanding of the Constitution. If the courts will say that it's unconstitutional, that's basically what my approach was. I didn't understand. Anyway, the guy comes down, says, "You can't put it up. Wait. The county councilor is going to study this, and we're going to decide." Amaniya ve'ikuf. I took out 10 cents from my pocket. I went to the payphone, and I called Mosquitoes. And I told them what was happening. I want to put up a menorah. And these are the goyim. This is nothing to do with the Jewish community yet. I don't know how long it took. It took an hour, 2, 3, whatever. I'm waiting over there. They come down. They say, "Okay, they gave a haskoma bracha." This is
a matter of minutes or an hour?
Not minutes, hours. Probably. It took a couple of hours. The guy came down and says, "Yeah, you can do it." So we put it up. Television stations were there, and the county executive was there and took a nice picture with us. And it was also given good. It made it to the news. In fact, including the suffix that was by the county, and the solution was that it's okay. But the Jews didn't like that. But it was too late. It was already up, and we had a ceremony. Gemacht. A number of people came. But the issue is that it was visible in a very visible place, the plaza of the county government. And as far as I'm concerned, it was the presuminisis that the Rebbe wanted, the television stations and the newspapers. In fact, the controversy ended up being a hechsher on this whole thing. So there was nothing negative about it. And the Jewish community didn't get their act together to even voice their opposition to it, which I'm sure if they would have known about, they would have. And then it would have been a controversy, and it would have been mired in this Chalukah Deis, and we come across it, which eventually we did as Bala Machlokes. I didn't do anything wrong. I did whatever the county, gave permission for. We did everything Kedasa Kedin. But anyway, that's the way it went. Afterwards.
So was there an answer from the Rebbe?
So wait.
In that original thing?
Yeah. So listen, this is a Schatoy Ani Maskir. Schatoy Ani Maskir, I didn't call back to say, At alles is good. That's not the way it should have been. I had a chasana that I came for a day or two after Hanukkah. And I'm here in 770, and Leibel Groner comes over to me. There was a settle from the Rebbe. Ma hoya surf dover be St. Louis. So first of all, I felt very, very bad. I'm a fragen.
The Rebbe wrote
He wanted to Maho Yosef Landa. Oh, but if the Rebbe asked already,
translate what that means.
Translate what it means. What was the conclusion in St. Louis? So I went to work. As soon as I got home, it was after the chassan, the next day, whatever. I took all the articles and the letters to the editors. People wrote, and I responded. Most of the lashonos that I responded were from the Rebbe's letters. Mamish took out paragraphs from the Rebbe's letters to the Teaneck story.
Federation.
Because those were ideas that are appropriate. If it worked in Teaneck, it should work in St. Louis also. Whatever, but they wrote very harsh things, And there's also an element over here to be malamed schus on them. I'm an unknown to them, and they had no idea what was coming next. Here's this new guy comes to town. Nobody knows which synagogue he belongs to. Nobody knows what he's doing, and what his end objective over here is. And he comes and he upends this long-standing position of the Jewish community against these things. And it comes this young guy, mamish, new in town, and Tut Vasavil. So it shook up their. So I'm being malamed schus a little bit why they felt the way they felt. But so I wrote, piled in. There's a whole pile of stuff that I wrote, what I sent, whatever little piece that was on it, and that's when I got that answer. Afterwards.
What answer?
So the answer that I got was on the answer, and it goes along this Indian at the Rebbe. It's did something, and we hold this, both my wife and I. It was a very difficult time. We didn't realize it. That was going to happen next year. The real difficult time was war that broke out. Mamish, the whole community against us, practically.
So I want to hear about that, but can you tell us?
But this answer was prepping us for what was going to come next year. The answer was as follows. I asked a few things.
It's a copy? Or
no, this is my handwriting.
That's you copy from Maskiris?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have it. I have in my wallet for all these years. I carry the Ksaviat Kodesh of Binyamin Klein.
Can I see it?
You're not going to see it.
Yeah.
If I can find it over here. Mistam, it's here. Yeah, it's here. I have the Vilstaff Gazette sitting around over there.
So you keep this in your pocket always?
I keep this always been. Yeah.
Okay, no one was in.
It's full. Let me see. This is the answer. It's going to probably break into pieces because it's old. But let me show you. This is Ksaviat Kodesh of Binyamin Klein. This is it. Do you want to see that? The host.
I find it amazing that you carry it in your pocket.
I put it in there and I never took it out. It wasn't like...
Okay, so how...
So the answers was...
can you read it and translate it also?
Yeah.
I'm looking at it while you...
So the Rebbe writes, there were three parts to the answer. One was the Hagdama, and then there was the answer to the question. I was hoping I'd be able to get Hujros from the Rebbe on how to respond to their tightness. See if we can get a little bit more. And they also called a meeting, and they wanted me to come to the meeting, which actually never materialized. So what should be the position at the meeting? I wanted to know. Anyway, but the Hagdama was Ashrei Chelkoi V'Goda... What?
Lahagiv ala
Katava. That's the Rebbe circled my words. And here he circled the words La'asifa. So those were answers to 1 and 2.
Same. So
that's the way it went. That's the way the Rebbe's answer was. So he made an asterisk and then wrote the answer to that.
This is what you wrote?
Question. These are...
Lahagiv ala Katava?
Those are my words. And Binyamin circled it because the Rebbe circled it and put an asterisk next to it.
So if you're asking what to answer on the article,
on their article,
so that makes an asterisk, and then
number 2,
what should I say by the meeting?
The position we should take at the Asifah.
That's the second asterisk, okay.
That was the second. Actually, the first answer is before and probably on the other side. Probably if you could flip it over. Ashrei Chelkoi v'Godel Schusoi. Praised is his portion, and great is his chus. Shekidei Shem Shemayim, that he sanctified Hashem's name. Let me just read it and translate. V'chulu, etc., underlined twice. V'loi his bayish mipnei hamaligim, and he was not embarrassed before those who scoff, who dismiss, or anyone who's a malik is anyone who stands in the way and of a good thing. V'heifitz Yahadus bepoil, and he disseminated Yahadus, Judaism, bepoil, actual. Betoich rivavois, among tens of thousands, underlined, ma'achenu b'nei Yisrael shlita v'chulu. So there were no tens of thousands who actually saw the menorah, but the story hit the media in such a big way that they heard about it. And so there are a few things over here. There's no hagzama over here. The Rebbe wasn't magzim, of course. So but you understand how the importance of these things are and how the Rebbe was machshivit. And this continued, I'm going to continued afterwards also for weeks and months later also. And the value that the Rebbe put on media. At that time, that wasn't so muskam in the Jewish community, in the Frum community.
The media.
What's that media?
The media is a medium.
Yeah, what's the use of that? There was no appreciation of it. It could be that even among Anshe Shlomeinu, there wasn't, this is secondary. Yeah, it's not the tachlis, but it delivers the tachlis. You inform people and you present it as a celebration of Yiddishkeit. So these are all the things that the Rebbe writes in those letters to Tinek. And the media was something which was a big deal. Otherwise, I don't understand what the river voice Ma'achenu b'nei Yisrael was tens of thousands. And the soft ma'isa is L'poil Mamish. Not only did this thing die down, I'll tell you some stories. It died down, but it really catapulted us. It put us into a position that everybody now knows about us.
To be reckoned with.
Yeah.
There's the other half of the mind.
Yes, it's coming.
Oh, okay.
So B'negeya, the article, how to respond to the article and how to position to take at the meeting, which was going to take place. B'negeya 1 and 2. See that? The whole and any other questions. And here's a wonderful example of how the Rebbe get the same thing in what's the shliach kilchase, what's the Shreya's book, the same sentiment that there are a lot of things that need to be decided on the spot, and that's dafka the way he wanted it to be. It's not a klal godel. There's some things, as you'll see, some things that need to be kept kind of uniform, but nevertheless, there are things that are local in nature, and anyway, let me read this. B'negeya 1 and 2, v'chol kiyotz, and any similar questions, yizdabru hashluchim sheyichi b'matzav kahanal beinehem. There should be a conversation among the shluchim who share these kinds of situations. Behishtatvus, in parentheses, behishtatvus hayedei hamatzav b'Washington, Rabbi Yosef Landa, the one who is familiar with the situation in Washington, Rabbi Avram Shem Tov. And what's the purpose of that conversation? L'mnoya stiros mezelozeh, to prevent contradictions from one to the other. V'adarabba l'sayeya zelozeh, and quite to the contrary, that one should help the other. So at that time, it was very easy for a shliach to feel that this is his little world.
A local
and
issue.
The repercussions of that the JCRC, for example, in this town, Jewish Community Relations Council, is going to hear what somebody else did and was mevater, wasn't mevater, so forth and so on, and then it becomes, you don't understand the precedent that you set. But this concept really is a very good one to keep in mind, essential, that things that one person does really establishes you not only your local rabbi of your local little Chabad house, big or little. You are representing Gans Lubavitch, and that's the Rebbe. And you need to make sure that you're not creating precedents that the Rebbe would be displeased with. And that's a grace achrayus, and it's something for everybody to keep in mind. So we did that. What happened was this.
Then the Rebbe finished off, Asker al Hatzin.
Asker al Hatzin l'chol hanal. Right.
So you're saying you did that?
So the opportunity to, when was there an opportunity to speak to all the Shluchim? And who were in this matzav, or were potentially in this matzav, who they were preparing to have a meneda and whatever. First kinus Shluchim. So I went over to Rabbi Krinsky, and by the way, Rabbi Krinsky was a great support. When all of that broke loose, the second year, you have no idea what I mean by that. It was, there weren't two Jews who met that Chanukah and for a week afterwards, who this was not the topic of conversation. It was. And they very artfully made me the bad guy. Right. Because until I came to town, the Alsgeven Shan still, and all of a sudden I come to town, there's a big problem. What did I do? Absolutely nothing wrong. Whatever they had a problem with was their own interpretation of the Constitution, right. Without any yesod. And it turned out that years later, a couple of years later, that's exactly what the Supreme Court said. So there...
You're saying you went to Rabbi Krinsky?
What was that?
You
no, that, I'm saying that he was ma'oded a lot. He was ma'oded a lot. And both he and Rabbi Groner as well, Rebbe wanted to know blow by blow what was going on.
In St. Louis. One of the integral components of being a chassid are the Chassidish Yomim Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nisan, or Gimel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other, and be better Chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Iker needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Der Herr. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidish Yom Tov. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have this set. Go to derher.org/Our Days. Order your set today and start living with the Chassidish Yom Tov.
Second year, to get down to the Poel Mamish, they understood from everything that I said. That, I want you to know, I never had, I'm not taking a great deal of credit for it, this is how we were brought up. Never entertained for a minute not to do it. With all the lachats that was brought, first year, from the first year to the second year. But they saw this as that this is it's destroying everything that the Jewish community built for who knows how long. I mean, that's the way they saw it. They saw it as a real threat to them. And they also understood that this is the way it's going to be. So we try the best we can. Try the best they can to
So
communicate.
what was the heart of it? It's an opposition to Lubavitch, or they're afraid of something?
On the outside, there were two nukudas, probably a combination of both. They're uncomfortable there. These are people who were very accustomed to keeping Yiddishkeit shashtil, not in the street. Outside is that's the attitude. Shashtil, whatever Jewish is. They said these things to me, you know. Some of it they were malbish in the itztala of Kedusha by saying, you're commercializing Hanukkah like the other holiday. You know, it's meant to be the families together in the home, you know. So they saw this as offensive to whatever preconceived idea they had of what Hanukkah is supposed to be, which wasn't exactly the same as ours. And so that was one. The others, there were some who were kind of principled. They call it a slippery slope. You know, you have to protect this separation of church and state. You have to keep religion out of it. This is a mandate from the Constitution. This is a choiv kodesh, and
It's not
in
in
their
the Constitution,
minds,
by the way.
what?
It's not in the Constitution.
It's not.
No.
That's correct. The Lashon of separation is not. For sure not.
Yeah.
For sure not. There is an establishment clause. We're not going to go into the shyness of the law. Yeah. So some of them were principled about this matter, and they saw this as slippery slope. You do this today, next thing what's going to happen is they're going to force kids to make, to say something on Kratzmach and school, Jewish kids and whatever. Lepoil Mamish, the Rebbe argues that it's punkt hepech, that if you don't utilize the rights and the freedoms that America is giving us, then you lose them. The way to exercise, the best thing how to preserve it is to exercise those. That's, we're malbish it in whatever. You know, I think I said that when we last spoke, I kind of said this. There's a chinuch, all of the Miftzayim, including this as well. Yeah, the Rebbe wanted to be mevatel kol hamoini shel romi. He wanted people out there to see. He wanted to see a robust and a proud and an open celebration of Hanukkah, and he wanted to get American Jews a little out of their, famachta thing that this is something we do still a hate and private hate. Yes, that's for sure, but he also was mechanach us. It's the same nekuda with. I'm getting off a little bit. The same nekuda with Miftzayim. Miftzah Tefillin, you stand in the street, millions of people have put on Tefillin. Millions of people. Pashut reason, these Jews, this one was a kakafta the loy monach Tefillin, other, whatever, he has to put on Tefillin today, and here you are, Tutateva Yidin, Mizakim with a mitzvah, the Eibishter is happy, the Yid is happy, and the shliach is happy, or whoever is doing the Miftzayim is happy, so it's a good thing. There's a much, much deeper nekuda, which the others who are into kira for chokim, so far, some, they miss that, which is why they don't do the kind of stuff. That our guy is standing out there and it's hot in the heat and in the cold, and he's standing out there. Taking off time from learning, and most of the answers that he gets are rejections. And he goes, and again, he continues, and if he's zeicher and he gets some of the penalties, against the simcha, the entire ket of a yid, every yid, you never met him before, you're not going to see him again, you're not going to get a donation from him, you're not going to get whatever, there's no long-term relationship over it, you don't even get his name and address. Nowadays he would say, I don't know if they take the email addresses nowadays, maybe they do, but even that, garnished, all you did was you did a mitzvah, and for them is gishtan, and you stand in the street, and that chinuch gets baked in. The entire ket of Eid is natural to us because the Rebbe taught us that. The entire ket from Ein Mitzvah is natural to us. With his bun in the skala, we can rekindle that. To others, it's completely strange. completely strange. Mechapnisht. And that's, you think the fact that there are, I don't know, 4,000, 5,000 Batei Chabad around the world, and millions and millions and millions of Jews who were touched by it, happens to be Lubavitch. Why? Because there's some great organization in the world of Lubavitch, some master plan, marketing plan that succeeded. That no, there probably are better marketers out there than us, and more organized people than us. Tzadova Pashut. It's this nekuda that Rebbe was mechanech, and we have to realize it, the yoker of that. And that is why Lubavitch today, not Lubavitch, it's the Rebbe. That is why we are who we are. And the others are still scratching their heads and wondering, how did they do it? And they'll come learn some Chassidus, they'll learn how we did it. But that's the Nekuda. Das is the Nekuda. Anyway, where am I up to in my story?
I mean, talking about the opposition of the second year.
The second year was huge. It was intense. It was the front page of the Jewish Light, which is the weekly newspaper over there. It was the editorial of the Jewish Light. It was sort of gerashed. What happened was he didn't realize, the county executive, he approved it, but he didn't realize. And he got 40 letters from Jewish letterhead organizations. Almost all of them in opposition. As soon as we heard that they're getting letters written, so I also hopped a few letters, people to write and whatever, in support. But there was overwhelmingly against it. And he's getting that, and he's confused. He said, I did this for the Jewish community.
Right.
And it's dafka the Jewish community that's so riled up against it. So he didn't chapsach, he thought he had time to make a decision, because in his goyish mind, he thought that Chanukah falls out on Krasmach, which was a few weeks away. The Poel, all of a sudden, 2 days before Chanukah, 3 days before Chanukah, whatever it is, we let him know that it's decision time, we have to do this. So he made the mistake of calling a meeting of all the people who wrote him letters. A big conference room in the government center. Probably 40 people against it. It was me, Rabbi Rifkin, another 1 or 2 people who showed up. And it was nasty. And all we wanted to do was there was no one who was smart enough and at hand to the county, to the county executive, to let him know this is not a good idea, to bring these parties together. But there was no time. He basically told his secretary at the end of the day, call all these people and come to the meeting tomorrow, or something like that. So we had them, and that was nasty. The people who now are my good friends, who got up and thundered against this, and they said, if this is what they're going to do in our community, we had announced the building campaign already at that point. So I'm going to do whatever I can. This is a former rabbi of a leading congregation, probably the largest one in town, and St. Louis is predominantly Reform. He got up and he thought, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure it doesn't happen. And there were people who withdrew some pledges, some major pledges. I did whatever. This wasn't chas v'shalom. I never did b'tor complaint. I informed. Whatever happened, as things happened, blow by blow. Every day there was 5 things that happened. So I'd call in and I'd say, this happened, this is what this one did, and this is what that one did. There was some interesting geros, which I cannot share, but there was some interesting geros.
Yeah, he does throughout this thing.
Yeah, there was some interesting geros on how to deal with some individuals. It will stay for now. Maybe there will be some time. And we held our ground, but our leading balabatim were concerned because they were they meant to help us. And they saw us, what's going to be with our fundraising for Chabad, And I said to them? I was the naivete is, Baruch Hashem, at that time was a beautiful one. But over the years it kind of dissipates. I said to them, to these are my friends who were raising money. I said, if I change my position on a thing like this because of somebody's donation, then I'm the same as the others. That's how they run their business. That's not us. And I owe them a great of gratitude that they accepted it and they supported me. And all these things, everything I wrote, this one said, that one said, whatever. It was $50,000 back then, a donation, 2 brothers.
That withdrew.
That they withdrew. $50,000 in 1983, 1980 was a lot of money.
Even today, it's not.
Yeah. For a building campaign, it doesn't buy a building. Understood. It was a tough thing, but I don't know. My tmimis was straightforward. I have to tell you, there was a time that after that meeting where the county executive had to do something. He had to give in to some of that pressure. He couldn't say. So he kind of cut the baby in half. What did he do? He said, you can put it up for one day. You can put it up for one day. You can't camp out there. Plaza pshora he made. Now, putting it up for one day, if it's a violation of church and state, is one day Torah nicht. You're not allowed to do one day either. So he basically agreed with us on principle. But I can put a time restriction on it, he said, and he had hoped that would make them happy, but it didn't. It really didn't make them happy. He didn't process that part. So listen, Rabbi Shmuel David Reitchik, his routine is that he used to stop in St. Louis once a year, sometimes twice a year. He had Balabatim, he would visit, and from the time that we moved there, he would stay by us. I come home from this meeting, I'm all shook up, you can imagine. It was a terrible meeting. And Reb Shmuel David is there. So I tell him what's going on. No, what's at the end? You want to know what did the county executive say? So I told him that I can put it up only for one day. No, I thought they can't. So he says, so he said that you could, right? It has to be done in a big way. It can't be done. What is this one day? Yo. Is gerecht. He agreed. Anyway, so I remember that. The kids. Like I said to you, no one in town, two Jews didn't meet without talking. This was a topic of conversation. Somehow, by Hashgacha Pratis, the Federation, this is the Koch story. The Federation had an annual meeting. The annual meeting is where they bring all their big supporters. A couple hundred people. It was a breakfast that year in the Breckenridge Hotel. A great breakfast. They had planned it beforehand. And this was, I think, Zois Chanukah. I think it was the last day of Chanukah, maybe the day after Zois Chanukah. And the city is still kocht over all these things. Maiminim and Masmilim, mostly Masmilim, against this guy who came and caused trouble. I'm the cause of the problem because until I came, nobody, there was no arguments. I'm the cause of the argument.
If you don't do anything,
I'm sorry?
If you don't do anything, and they don't have
That's right.
That's
right. No, but listen, arguing is, making an argument is not the tachlis of our thing, and the Rebbe didn't want that either. But if it broke out, we held our ground. I think that was the Rebbe's approach. It's lav dafke, the Rebbe, I'm not sure, I can't say with certainty that you dafke have to go there to this and this place, of tzlochas, to spite them. I don't think that was the kavanah. But if that was your decision and you did it, don't back down because these guys, because of all these krumatainis that they have. B'shum finished. And that's the Chil Hashem, Kiddush Hashem that he thinks. Because backing down a retreat and a Jewish Indian is a Chil Hashem. And their position is that. And that's why Kiddush Hashem Shemayim, I think. Anyway, it's the last day of Hanukkah, the day after that, and they're having this annual meeting with a breakfast, And the guest speaker, now who comes to Federation's annual meeting? All these letterhead organizations, American Jewish Congress, American Jewish Committee, Jewish Community Relations, all the alphabet soup of traditional establishment Jewish organizations, all the people who hold the views, who thought that the menorah is the worst thing in the world at that moment. And they're there. And they make up like a couple of hundred people over there and whatever. So the guest speaker, I don't know how they got the guest speaker to come. It was the mayor of New York City, was Ed Koch. You probably don't remember ever hearing Ed Koch.
I'm familiar with Ed Koch.
You heard of him.
Yeah.
He was a bombastic fellow. He spoke, no holds barred. He said what he wanted to say, and he said it loud and clear and very dugder. And no holds barred. He whatever. Nish nispol. That's the way he was. That was the personality. He's a brash New Yorker, you might want to say, and very proud of his Yiddishkeit.
And his matzeva, he wrote.
Yes, I heard him say that. Someone asked him, a reporter asked him, you hear him saying that? I heard it on some station. A reporter asked him, what would you like your epithet to be? A proud Jew. Something like that, he answered. That was the first thing. And then passionate love for New York. That was number two. But
I think his matzeva has Shema Yisrael on it.
Yeah, he wants it. Anyway, so he's coming to town. Why he agreed to come to speak was that for St. Louis, and he gives a talk.
He was the mayor at the time.
At the time, sitting mayor, yeah. And he's giving this talk. He didn't talk nothing about the menorah. He had no idea what was going on in St. Louis about this.
You were at this dinner?
Who?
You were at this breakfast?
I was not. That morning, there was a bris. One of our anash had a baby, and there was a bris that morning. And I remember people coming from that to the bris, and they shared what happened.
Okay.
So I heard a mama's fresh, first-hand story. Sollen sein gesund, the Cohens, Shalom Cohen. I don't know where he used to live in Pittsburgh for many years. At a bris. Anyway, so I'm at the bris, and this is the story. They talked about you. Was it the Meiser? He finishes speaking, and someone, I know who it is, a friend of mine. At that point, the Frum community backed me up, 100% in St. Louis. They saw this as anti-Yiddishkeit. They saw it the Orthodox community. And there were no Lubavitch. They weren't Lubavitchers by any stretch of the imagination, but this is out of hand, what's going on. And they jumped, to their credit, they jumped to whatever they were able to do in terms of defense. So, questions and answers. Guy raises his hand, says, Mr. Mayor, you're a Jewish mayor of the largest city with the largest Jewish population. Could you tell us how you deal with religious symbols on public property, and specifically with a menorah on public property? When that question was asked, there was a big gasp that went up from the whole audience. Couldn't believe, they were embarrassed that this was brought up. In front of the illustrious visitor, the mayor from New York. Now he knows this shanda that's going on in St. Louis. They were aghast. Right. But he doesn't know what's going on. Menorah, public property, no problem. He says, I am fully in favor of it and support it as long as it's privately funded. That's the way. But let me tell you something. We have one in Manhattan here, and we have one in Manhattan there. I didn't know the places that he mentioned, the few public menorahs that we have, something. And I don't have any problem with it. I think it's perfectly fine as long as it's privately funded. So that alone, for the people in the room, oh no, he's taking the wrong side on the issue. It's a Jewish mayor, though. And so basically what he's saying is, at a minimum, it's okay. Both Both sides have a point, whatever they can make, it's okay.
I think you skipped the part that you said, and in fact,
In fact, you're good. You're good. He says, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about the menorah. He says, the people who put up the menorah in Manhattan, they're the Luboviches, he says. And they live in Brooklyn. And the menorah is in Manhattan. Friday afternoon, when they light the menorah, it's real close to Shabbos. And they have to get home to Brooklyn in time for Shabbos. This is him telling you this for the crowd that wanted to hear this the least.
Right.
He's telling them, so what we do is we give them a helicopter and we fly them from Manhattan to Brooklyn so they can get home in time for Shabbos. That's the story. I heard the story. I picked up the phone and I called the mosquitoes. And I told Label, he says, the Rebbe smiles from ear to ear, but it says the Rebbe smiled when I heard that story. So broad. It was a big, huge, he had nachas from couch.
Yeah.
He had nachas from couch. And he said, das heißt doch, als sagt, das ist constitutional. That's what the Rebbe said. But the Rebbe said, and that's what Label told me when he told the story, das heißt doch, als sagt, that's constitutional. The Rebbe just wanted to gain people, who support this, get rid of this argument of constitution.
And this is before that Supreme Court case.
Before the Supreme Court, everything was before. Yeah. I'll tell you another couple of things. I come back to 770. No, this is before coming back to 770. I can actually see where. So bediuk the date. What's the negay over here? The point over here is, I get a letter in the mail. I get a letter in the mail from Rabbi Yankiv Yehuda Hecht, JJ. He didn't know me. I never spoke to him. I can't ever remember speaking to him. He didn't know what was going on in St. Louis. This wasn't reported locally. There was no means of really reporting this. There's only one way, and you can kind of guess at it. That he writes me a letter of support. And you can read it. I only have a copy of it over here. You can. Yeah, this is it. I think this is it. And somehow found it. This was December 12, 1983. And he writes a letter, says, and he ends up, don't listen to those guys. All those people who think that you have to hide your Jewishness. That's not the way to go. Out there nowadays, everybody's out there with what they stand for, not to be embarrassed. And what you did is a great thing. And keep up the good work, and may Hashem be with you in all your undertakings. And that's a whole aricha. You hear Yankel Hecht over there. Throughout that whole thing, you hear him over there. What's the Dokashen? How did this happen? I can't say with certainty that he didn't write this, unless he was told to.
It seems out of the blue. Like, why would he send you such a letter?
Yeah. Doesn't make sense. Was he was going around being ma'idit? Every shliach who he heard up, he didn't hear the story either. I can guarantee you. I can't say with certainty, so I'm qualifying what I'm saying. But I'm willing to bet on it that this was Milmaila who told him to write a letter. And he describes himself against Harichis, about the National Committee for Furtherance of Jewish Education, making a major organization. Because I wrote that they had a bunch of letterhead organizations who wrote against it. So he's the National Committee for is one of the world's largest educational movements today, and wishes to extend a heartfelt congratulations on the accomplishment of erecting a menorah in the heart of St. Louis during Hanukkah. Too long we've shown the world an inferiority complex. It goes pounds away, and get to this. So, what went on over here? Somebody thought, and said, went on the mosquito and told her, I'm only guessing, Write a letter. Tell him to write a letter. A vidut that he can show to somebody. That then a couple of months later, I think it was a couple of months. I'm weiter in 770. I see. I think I was more than 770 than I was in St. Louis. That wasn't the case, but this is the story. So I see Label again. Oh, he says, the Rebbe gave me something that I should give to you. He told me befesh. The Rebbe gave me something I should give to you. Was? He didn't remember. Come into the office when you have a chance. He couldn't even remember what it was, and then he finally remembered. And he's going around. I remember him muttering to himself in his office, we're trying to find it. And he says to himself, this place over here, he says, by the time you walk from here to there, you have 5 distractions. He says, about the America's office. So this is why I can't remember where he put it. It was the Maisa. There was that Hanukkah in New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, issued a proclamation. The General Assembly, actually, the whole legislature voted on this. And it's a resolution adopted January 9, 1984. And it's all about Hanukkah. And it also mentions these words. Friends of Lubavitch, I don't know who sent it into the Rebbe. I don't know whether it was Friends of, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was, because I think Moshe Harrison didn't go by Friends of Lubavitch. I don't think that was, ich weiß nicht. Whereas the Friends of Lubavitch reminded us anew during the season of religious observance of the high concepts of ethical and righteous principles for which we all share and to which we all strive by consecrating a menorah before the state capitol during this festival of Hanukkah in commemoration of the first recorded military victory over spiritual oppression. It's one of the whereas. And this was sent into the Rebbe.
Someone sent that to the Rebbe. And
the Rebbe made this notation there with the Rebbe's pencil. You can see it. And told them to send it into St. Louis. That I should be, this is the Rebbe's pencil mark.
We all strive at consecrating, so the Rebbe is highlighting this section. We all strive to consecrate Menorah for the state capital during this festival of Hanukkah in commemoration of the first recorded military victory over spiritual oppression.
They made a Menorah, they consecrated the Menorah to state capital.
And this is the part that the Rebbe...
So the Rebbe highlighted that and says...
An arrow.
Send it to St. Louis.
People told you that's the Rebbe's handwriting?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is what the Fidik Rebbe says about you have to remind me.
The what?
The Rebbe, you know what's going on.
Oh, you saying what the Fidik Rebbe told?
Yeah. So
I was thinking
it gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. There's a young man over there who's having a problem. And this might help him. So these are it's not me. I'm sure it's every shliach. You do your work with Mesira and Nesina. On Fragen Kashas and on Chachmas. And then you get a little bit older and some of the stuff, you think that you're getting smarter.
You can do it in your own.
No, you have your own ones. Man hat gemeint das, or gemeint das, whatever. Don't learn any pshetlich, was man hat gemeint. You're not a versteher of was man hat gemeint, just do what you're told. Kind of thing. And that's it. So, those are the couple of stories. Just tell you an interesting thing, which has to do more with the history in St. Louis. Which, before I went out in shlichus, it's very important to contextualize these answers from the Rebbe or these heroes. You have to contextualize it, and sometimes we are not able to do that. Gesagt, Rebbe gesagt, you have to contextualize it in any context, and then maybe you understand it. And then you need to listen to what the Rebbe writes about Tanya. You got to talk to the elders in your community. Before I came to St. Louis, I was again given the Seder, whatever. I went in, had a conversation with Rabbi Chadikov. Now, St. Louis is unique in many ways. Probably every shliach thinks that his place is unique in many ways. But in this union, I think we're unique, should be unique. When I came there's a whole element of don't want to denigrate a community of people by calling them misnagdim. They're not that. They really aren't. But what the Rebbe would call Olam Misha. And there were even among them a couple of people who were doing kiruv rechokim, quote unquote, which was a term that the Rebbe didn't seem, it was displeased by, I want to say. Because they're not rechokim. Anyway, the Rebbe spoke about that. So I wanted to know, I wanted to hear what Rabbi Chadikov says about working together with them. It's nice to be friendly, not to be accused of competing, not to be confused of chveisvos or hurting some other, this and that and the other. I wanted to know. And this is from Eden. From Eden. So I'm reminded of the story, B'toich a story. So I went in and I spoke to him about this, and I asked him, what do you think? I wasn't slanting the question not to do it. Fakert, I think maybe, if anything, it was something that I said, yeah. Or what would I have anticipated? Yeah, was nicht. Kennt uns zusammen. No. That wasn't his answer. He said he loved to give me shalom. I don't know if you know that. He had a mashal for everything. But he was very clear, deliberate. Wasn't on the fence about this. He says, "Hazoi vi in refuah. Is there shittis in refuah? You have this approach to refuah and this approach to refuah. And there's a certain Rebbe and a certain chayla that would respond dafke to this derech, and there's another Rebbe and another chayla who responds in a different way, and treats in a different way. And they both are doing good things. But to mix them up, I don't know. I'm kind of putting words, but it's to mix them up. It's a prescription for disaster, but that's not what he knows. Weren't the words that he used. So and I watched over the years, and in fact, the Shlichus Chassid book has a lot of that as well. And in the Igros Kodesh, you see a lot of that as well. And it goes back to the same question. The fact that we have 5,000 Chabad houses is because of Chassidus, and it's because of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's approach to a Yid, and the Rebbe's approach to Torah and Mitzvahs, every single Yid. And that's what he teaches us in all kinds of ways, that he gets us to go along with that. We have a Nefesh Bahamas that is resisting, but that's everything that the Rebbe taught us. And these things are as much for us, like I said, in all kinds of polis, there's a much for us. I think when we spoke about it, I talked about, the Rebbe was talking about Mi Yehudi, the Rebbe was talking about Tahum for the Yeshiva Bachanim, the Rebbe would talk about Shluchim, Shluchim. Things that had no shaykhs, the Talmidei Yeshivas, and they were there by the hundreds, and the Rebbe didn't want to be Mevatel Torah. Chas v'sholom. And the answer is that this was a chinuch, how you look at the world, and how you understand the world, and how a Yid is supposed to see another Yid's mitzvah, etc., etc., etc. So let me tell you something. Ancient history. 1930s, when the Rebbe came to St. Louis, the Frierdiker Rebbe, there was a newspaper in St. Louis at that time called Der Yiddische Record, a Yiddish language newspaper. A lot of the stuff that was printed in the story about the Rebbe's visit to St. Louis is from there, the information that he got. Why? The editor of the newspaper, Gewen Ayidov, hat lieb gehabt dem Rebbe. He loved the Rebbe and understood him. I understood this big word. I take that back. But he was enamored.
He appreciated
the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Gewaldikim Snapshots was going on in Russia. He writes 4 weeks worth of articles. Each it was a weekly. He writes, and the glowing terms. No one writes about anybody like that. The way he writes about the Frierdiker Rebbe. What was his mahus? He was an ehrliche Yid, by the way. Shemet Torah Mitzvos in Ganzen, a shtickler Talmud Chacham. He was a Mizrachist. He was a Zionistische kind of guy. And what was the matzav of American Yiddishkeit in 1930? So it's interesting. You'll see if you look up in the Mafteches of Igros Kodesh, you'll find Aryeh Leib Gelman letters, long letters, 5 pages, 6 pages. Letters. We don't know what he writes, but you can learn from the letter that he writes to the Rebbe. We have to do something about Yiddishkeit in America. 1930s, he's given a massive yorud. Ton epis. Let's work together. And you should see that, and this is a friend. And the Rebbe writes to him, Frierdiker Rebbe writes to him, I wouldn't even respond if it wasn't you, who I know, that we're close. And whatever, he recognizes his closeness and the chavivus that he has for the Rebbe. He recognizes it, acknowledges it. But if it wasn't you, I wouldn't even respond. Basically, the more I don't want to put the words, but you can see it in the Igros Kodesh. The Rebbe writes over there, says to him, we speak 2 different languages. As if we're passing each other like ships in the night. This is not a good idea. Like Himam's that he does the ships in the night, but we are speaking languages like 2 people who cannot understand each other. So I love you, quote unquote, and it's wonderful what you're doing, and I appreciate, your desire to do this, but mixing them together, these are my words. And if you watch, and I think if you read Shlichus Kolchasa, you'll see a lot of answers like that also. But in Igros Kodesh, you see it again and again. There's one place where actually the Frierdiker Rebbe is disappointed in him. Given Atayar Yid, by the way, he wrote a book, which I found hilarious. This is already going off topic a little bit. Shluchim in St. Louis founded, knows that we are from the Mishpach of the Rebbe Yehuda. Rebbe Yehuda was Segal Landa.
That's
her name, yeah. Segal Landa. So, he found this book by Aryeh Leib Gelman, a St. Louisan, who eventually he moved to New York and he became the head of Mizrahi of America.
What's the book?
That's the name of the book is Hanei de Yehuda Umushnosei. It's a biography on the Hanei de Yehuda of all things that he decided to write. Published in Tovshne Chavdalad, I think 64 is when he wrote it. Ayid is not here for a long time already, but he was a shtickler Talmud Chacham, gekent epis fast lernen, and the Rebbe is disappointed in him. They were going to do something for Shabbos, epis something for Bima Eure Shmir Shabbos, and the Rebbe was masking to use
the Frierdiker Rebbe.
By the Frierdiker Rebbe, I say the Rebbe, yeah. All this is the Frierdiker Rebbe. Yes, Aryeh Leib Gelman. Same guy. I don't know if at that time he was in New York already, maybe he was still in St. Louis. But there were letters to him, and they're good letters, they're close letters, but this letter is disappointment. The Rebbe made up a condition, it sounds like. The Frierdiker Rebbe says they made a condition that you don't make it institutional. Yeah, of course I have to be supportive of anything people want to say or do for Shmir Shabbos, of course I would. But you put in names of organizations, and whatever you're in, and that was the condition that I said, that it doesn't become institutional. Very disappointed, because he saw that as divisive. These guys are doing it, these guys are doing it, the other guys are doing it. That's what happens when you work together with other people. They're only interested in getting points and credits and getting some publicity. That's not the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Haskonis. That's not the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Haskonis. So we have to be wary. I don't have all the answers and to know exactly where the lines are drawn. I'm not suggesting
Right,
that.
it obviously depends on each place, etc.
Absolutely am saying that, and that's a very important thing to be said. But the sensitivity to that, I heard, and I understand it, and I think that you want to know what the success of the Rebbe is and the success of Lubavitch is. It's the Chassidus. It's the Chassidus, and it's different than the others.
It's what we bring to the table.
And those are what we bring to the table. And that's the Hatzlacha. They're scratching their heads. What's the secret of Chabad? What's the secret? That's the secret.
Chabad is the secret.
Chabad is the secret, yeah.
The Rebbe is the secret.
Yeah. All right.
Amazing. I really appreciate it. This is a very geschmack conversation.
I think you got more than one.
Yeah, I'm sure there's much more to talk about. Seshakayach and Hatzlacha Rabbi and your shlichus. And thank you for sharing everything.
No problem. Happy to do that. The Eibishter should be Masliach you. And the ultimate goal is bringing Mashiach.
Amen. Karav Mamish.
Sei gesund.